What's up, church family? Hey, I'm here today with Jeremy BEUTTEL, and we're going to be walking through Ruth chapter 1, verses 14 through 22. This was the passage that I got to preach on this past Sunday, but for the sake of keeping the conversation going after the sermon, we're going to do a little bit of reflection. Jeremy, are you ready to jump in? Say what's up to the church family.
What's up, guys?
You got to officially say what's up. All right.
What's up?
What's up? All right, so chapter 1, verses 14 through 22. Let's read 14 through 18 to start. We'll reflect on it. Then we'll do the second half, read it, reflect on it, and we'll come to a close. So here we are. Verse 14 of chapter 1. And they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Then it goes on to say, verse 15, Then she said, Behold, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, Do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me, and worse, if anything but death parts you and me. When she, Naomi, saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. So, Jeremy, in verses 14 through 18, either reflecting on the sermon or just reading it, it doesn't really matter, reading it yourself, like what would be some of the initial things that you're taking away from this passage? What's going on here?
Whoa.
Yeah. Big decision.
Yeah, first of all, like as we've gone, through in the previous sermon, like their lives have just been crushed. Not just crushed, but destroyed.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to pick up the pieces right now.
It seems like there's no way to recover.
Exactly. And so in 14, they lifted up their voices and wept again. Mm-hmm. And I believe you covered that on Sunday, where that's just not just wept, but wailed and
not just once.
Indescribable, just mourning. And I personally can't imagine what they were going through.
I don't know if I've ever wept or wailed twice in a row in my life. I mean, maybe a couple of days at a time or once each day through something really, really rough. Yeah. But it seems to me this is a one-day thing, and it's just really heavy on their hearts.
This is definitely not one of those, you cry about it and you feel better.
Right.
In their case, it's cry about it, scream, yell.
And see the hopelessness in front of me.
And then cry again, scream and yell.
Yeah, you got it.
And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her.
Yeah.
And I was reading this, and it just kind of hit me that how often, because and I don't really see Orpah and Ruth. I see two different personalities or two different mindsets.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to the church or Christianity or following Christ.
Yeah.
You can be like Orpah,
who
sees the potential of what's on the other side. There's the famine's gone in Bethlehem, right, in Judea. Yeah. And so there's a hope there. There's a future. They can somehow probably rebuild everything. But Orpah just wants to go back to the way she was, or back to the place she was, where it was comfortable.
Why rebuild?
Why rebuild when you can just...
Yeah.
But Ruth, she was a fighter.
Yeah.
She didn't want to give up. She saw that there was a need, so she stayed with Naomi.
Yeah.
And
do you think here, let's just hypothetically, let's put a hypothetical scenario in front of us. If God was not involved in Ruth's decision, would you see a need to go back with Naomi to Bethlehem? As good of a reason is what I'm saying.
No.
I mean, why? I mean, I could stay home. I could just, if I'm Ruth, I could just find another husband. I could stay with my family. and it's better if Naomi just go ahead to Bethlehem,
Exactly.
where she'll be with her people, I'll stay with my people. It's a sad situation, but oh well.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like that's what Orpah was thinking anyway, because for Orpah, following Yahweh was not even something she practically was willing to do and to sacrifice for.
And Naomi actually covered that from 11 to 14 or 13.
Good.
Where she actually just set it up and said, hey, this is all the reasons. It's 3 or 4 verses of reasons why you shouldn't come with me.
Yeah.
But because God was planning, like, nothing's going to get in the way of his plan.
Yeah.
Nothing is.
Yeah.
So in this case, Ruth is, like I said, she's a fighter. She just wants to stay with Naomi because that's where she wants to be.
And therein lies the challenge. Mm. That's the challenge.
Exactly.
Here Naomi 3 times, told them to turn back. And Ruth didn't. I mean, that's the challenge. Ruth, there's no real reason. There's no practical reason that you even need to consider this. This, in worldly terms, in terms of comfort, this is stupid. This is foolish. Don't do it.
Yeah.
But Ruth wasn't thinking along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, the things that she talked about were, I have no sons for you to have husbands.
Yeah.
She is too old to have a husband. So so she knows that there's no possible way for them, for Naomi to take care of them.
Yeah.
Because at this point in time, that they're a family unit right now.
Yeah.
They're quote unquote a team right now.
Yeah.
And it's just,
I don't even know if there's a real, as you said, I don't even know if there's a real way for Ruth to do much for Naomi.
no,
They're all women, they're all widows, they're all destitute.
Exactly. And at that period of time, it was definitely
you were in trouble.
Yeah.
If you didn't have a husband or a son to take care of you.
Yeah, because that's how throughout the entire Bible and in the books before this, that's how everything went.
Well, and look what Ruth says in verse 17. She's like, I'm not just going to go with you until it gets better for me. I'm not just going to go with you until it gets better for you. Maybe I find a husband. I'm not just going to go with you until the conditions get better. Where you die, I'm going to die. And where you get buried, I'm going to be buried. This is a lifelong decision for Ruth.
Exactly.
It's not a conditional one.
And Jesus kind of not going to the exact same spot in Luke where Dakota was on Sunday, but Jesus multiple times, a rich man actually came up to him and said, I want to follow you. And then Jesus said, okay. Good. But he goes, I have a father-in-law that I need to bury. Yeah. And Jesus said, leave your father to be buried by those who are already dead.
Yeah. Let the dead bury the dead.
Yeah. And Ruth is just fully abandoning everything. She has no hope right now, so she's clinging to the one thing that Naomi has actually rubbed off on Ruth, which is God.
Yeah.
It was her faith.
In the midst of her suffering.
Exactly.
Who is it? Notice that Naomi is bitter, but she's still saying, may the Lord bless you. In fact, go back in chapter 1. I just realized, look in chapter 1, verse 9. Do you notice what she says? May the Lord, Naomi says, may Yahweh grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like that's prayer language.
Exactly.
May the Lord do this. That's showing that Naomi still has a relationship with God. She hasn't rejected God. She's just bitter at her circumstances.
And how many times as believers do we go through a very trying and rough time?
Right on.
And we don't abandon God.
Right.
We know better than that. We know that we need him.
Yeah.
But we just don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So in Naomi's case, and later on, she wants to be called Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me.
Yeah. But she's recognizing it's the Almighty.
Yeah. and that's with any problem, the first thing how to solve it and how to move on from that problem is recognizing it.
Yeah.
Recognizing what the issue is or what the issue is caused from.
I learned a long time ago, especially in moments of suffering and in counseling other people who go through crisis and tragedy, leaving God never actually fixes the problem. It actually just intensifies the problem. So if I'm left with two options, do I want to suffer with God or do I want to suffer without God? Well, the answer is I would rather suffer with God. At least He's with me in it. Because neglecting Him, walking away from Him, doesn't fix anything.
No.
Let's jump into verses 19 through 22, and let's actually start to close it out here. But let's look at our final thoughts on 19 through 22, just to keep our devotional somewhat short. But I'll read it. It says, verse 19, "So they both went until they came to Bethlehem. And when they had come to Bethlehem, all the city was stirred because of them. And the women said, 'Is this Naomi?' She said to them, 'Do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me.'" That's what you were just saying a minute ago. Verse 21, "I went out full, but the Lord has brought me back empty." We should probably focus on that. "Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has witnessed against me and the Almighty has afflicted me?" So Naomi returned, and with her Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, who returned from the land of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. Jeremy, final thoughts, especially in verses 21 to 22. How would we close out here?
So Ruth has obviously made her decision to stay with Naomi. So that in itself is a trek from Moab. So on a map, just think, where is Moab? And actually do that in your house or wherever you're watching this. Just look up Moab. Then look up Bethlehem. 75 miles. I'm an object person, so I kind of need to see something. Someone just says 75 miles.
Okay. Wherever 75 miles is away from, now walk that distance.
Yeah, walk that distance. So
I love you, brother.
So the women in the town see that Naomi is distressed.
Yeah.
And they say, "Is this Naomi?" And Naomi immediately just says, "Don't call me that. Call me Mara.
Yeah.
For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me." And it says earlier, "I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty."
Yeah.
So, sorry. "Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?"
Yeah.
So you hear that all the time. If God's so good, why does He put bad things in my way, or why does He ruin my life?
Right.
In order for the finest piece of iron or wood,
You got it.
everything usually starts from a chunk,
Yeah.
about that big,
Yeah.
whatever size it is.
Good.
And at the start of the process, the biggest, the bluntest, the most rough tools are used to form and mold into the finest piece of artwork. And right now, God was just really chiseling and working on Naomi.
Yeah.
And that's I'm not going to say anything because I don't know your particular point or where your life is right now, where God has you in this time in your life.
Amen.
And it may be hard, it may not be hard, but I would just continue reading in Ruth.
Yeah.
There's hope. In any book of the Bible, there's always hope, there's always redemption.
Yeah.
And we can never forget that. And there are times in the Bible where it just seems like there is no hope. Yeah. And it just seems like there's no way for that person to have a new life. Mm-hmm. But God always comes out in the end because that's in His plan.
May I summarize? Here's one statement that I just took away and just even think possibly the Lord may have influenced me with this thought. We can close with this. You know, Naomi says here, "I went out full, but the Lord has brought me back empty." She just said the Lord brought her back. She didn't come back. She recognized that God is bringing her back. But she's saying, she might as well be saying, "God has brought me back empty." But is that the truth? Is that the reality? Is it the truth that God is really doing nothing on her behalf? So here's what it comes down to. I can either believe in the fact that God is doing nothing to work for me, to help me, to sustain me, merely because I just can't see it. Or I can take up trust and faith that, you know what? I'm just going to trust that because my daddy is good, because my God is good. He is doing something, and I need to be satisfied with the fact that I just don't see it yet. but I need to trust him in the process. Hey, church family, thanks for listening to today's devotional as we reflected on this past week's sermon. This, by the way, is the avenue we're going to be taking for our small groups here at the church in the month of May, on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights. All we're going to be doing is sitting down with the last week's sermon, having a discussion about it, and engaging in fellowship once again. So
It'll be good. It'll be good.
We encourage you to sign up. You can either attend on Zoom, look at it, attend the class via phone. We're setting that up for you, or you can attend in person. But what we want is to start slowly interacting and slowly getting back to fellowship again. So please sign up. Contact Terry Seeger at obchurch@sbcglobal.net. Pick a time. I'm good with Monday night, good with Wednesday night, good with Thursday night, whatever that might be. But jump in with us as a church, and let's keep doing this together so that we can advance the kingdom. Church family, we love you. Have a good day.
Sounds good.